Narayanam namaskritam naram chaiva narottamam devim sarasatim vyasam tato jayodhira nashta prayasho bhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavatyatama shoki bhaktir bhavati naistiki nigama kaparu garitam param shukamukaramita dravi samhitam pivata bhagatam rasamaram mohora hora sikabhuvyugam Krishna sadham bhagate dhyamikane karonashta drishamasha paranako dunodidam Kamapiyadabhishuta vishutam vibhu samapyena viramvidaksaram prakyahiduhu moharacharam sankleshanavanam usanti nanyataham Atmaramashtamune anagrantya korbantiaktam ita bhutaganaharim Anarta pashamam shakshad bhaktiyam lokashadana chakve satpada samitam Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinu Bandhu Jigapate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Jayatam Suruto Pango Mamamanir Matergati Matsavasha Param Boja Radha Namadanwanam Sriman Rasa Rasaram Vibhamsivana Karsan Vener Shanropaka Gopinata Sriyasanam Divyad Vendaranya Kapadumada Srimad Radha Ganashima Sanishto Shri Sri Radha Shila Govina Prestadabihi Seva Manushmarami Namo Brahmanya Devaya Go Brahmanyataya Cha Jagaritaya Krishnaya Govindaya Namo Namaha Mangalam Bhagavan Vishnu Mangalam Guru Raja Mangalam Panidikaksho Mangalaya Tano Hari Om Narayanaya Vidmahi Vasudevaya Dhimahi Tano Vishnu Prachodhyate Om Mahadevi Cha Vidmahi Vishnu Padnita Dhimahi Tano Lakshmi Prachodhyate Tapta Kanchana Gavanangi Radha Vindavaneshwari Vishavanusute Devi Pranamani Hari Priye Guru Brahma Guru Vishnu Guru Deva Maheshwara Guru Shaksha Parabrahma Tashmai Sri Guru Venamaham Durgami Patimi Andasha Skarapati Medu Shakipaya Sanan Santu Santu Vadam Vadam Amivida Jaratara Likite Kwana Manukiche Marashan Ekirin Yayanin Shravanishane Tubu Lave Ibadavichanam Om Maganati Maranda Shanganangana Saraka Chaksurun Minitam Yanatashmai Sri Guru Venamaham Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Shtapitam Yana Bhutare Swayam Rupa Karamayam Dhanati Sraparandikam Vandeham Sri Guru Siyata Karamanam Sri Gurun Vaishnavam Sha Sri Rupam Sagadatam Sahagara Raganatam Vitam Stam Sadevam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Larita Shri Vishakanvitam Stam Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pasaya Bhutare Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Tinamane Namaste Sarasati Devi Guruvani Pacharini Nirvishesa Sanivadi Praskada Desarani Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktivindam Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Rama Rama Hare Hare. Good morning everybody. Everybody's got it timed just right. Natasha, Derek, you guys weighed in right when we start to talk. you have it really fine tuned. Natasha, I love it. I just love it. How you sign in by saying all glories to Lord Krishna, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. This really makes my heart warm. You're becoming a genuine, authentic devotee, you and Larry. And you have so many good qualities, the two of you. I'm just so happy that you're advancing in devotional service. Krishna's given me the privilege of having been sort of a midwife for you guys, connecting you with the Vedic culture. Derek, Pamho. Pamho is Krishna abbreviated shorthand for, please accept my humble obeisances. And Vaibhavi says Hari Bol, in case you're wondering about that. Hari is the name of Krishna. Bol means say the name of Krishna or shout the name of Krishna. Good morning, Brent. Hare Krishna. Good morning, Jean. Jean was the first one to come. And we just have Govindadev jumping in also with us. Now, in Spanish Fork, as you know, we keep it pretty basic, pretty introductory, pretty elementary, because most of the people that come are first-time comers. So we don't get into, the appearance day of Narottam Das Thakur, the disappearance day of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, although this is very, very important. Once you reach a certain stage of familiarity with the basics of devotional service, then we key on the great personalities that have gone before us. Tarko Pritisham Shutiyabaniya Nashodi Shirmadirum Damasa Tatpambinim Mahajana yena gadasa pantam. When the servants of Yamaraj came to him, they were puzzled because they had been unable to drag away the sinful Ajamil for punishment. Ajamil chanted the names of the Lord at the last minute and thwarted their efforts to spirit him away to the abode of Yamaraj. And so they asked Yamaraj, according to the principles of the Vedas, this guy Ajamil was the most eligible for punishment. Is not religion laid out in the Vedas, and so therefore how could this have possibly happened? Is this not contravening the conclusions of the Vedas? And Yamaraj says the ultimate truths of religious life are not necessarily the result of studying the Vedas. But if you really want to know religion organically in life as it's practiced, then Tarko Pradisham Shuddhyo Vanir, then you need to mine, you need to excavate the hearts of the great devotees, the hearts of the great Mahajans. The real truths of religion are contained within the hearts of the devotees. Sometimes in the course of serving the Lord, a devotee will break a code, a Vedic code of religion. Bodhi bodhi sharvani sotabhyani atasa jajanam buhi badra buddha yatmashupadididi. Because the devotees are not just attracted to the letter of the law, but they're serving in love and devotion the supreme spirit of the law. And so they have insights that those who are law followers, those who are legalists, do not have access or privy to. And so sometimes the actions of the pure devotees are incomprehensible to the scriptural pundits. And so therefore the bottom line, Yamaraj is Mahajanu Yena Gatasapanta. The truths of religion are contained within the hearts of the devotees, the great souls. And there are 12 Mahajana Shayambhu Narashtada Kapila Kumara Manu Pradada Janaka Bhishma Bhara Vyashakam Baru. There is Lord Brahma, he is the head of our disciplic session. Narada Muni, of course, this is a quote. This morning we're discussing with Narada Muni. Lord Shiva is also an authority on ultimate religious principles. Prahlad Maharaj, Bhisma Dev, Janaka, the father of Sita, Bali Maharaj, Sukadeva Goswami, of course, Yamaraj himself, who basically utters this quote about religion contained within the hearts of all the devotees. And so we don't necessarily go to that level here in Spanish Fork because we're always operating on a very elementary introductory level. But I have to tell you, if you're local, like Rob, and you can go to Salt Lake City Temple on Sunday night, and we'll miss you in Spanish Fork. But if you're ready to graduate to that level, the devotees there are celebrating the appearance day of Lord Nityananda Trayodashi. And they're doing it with a bathing ceremony and a special talk on Lord Nityananda. So as much as we'd like to see you on Sunday, if you decide to go up to Salt Lake City and be part of that celebration, I will actually celebrate the fact that you're advanced to that level. Either way, we're presenting Krishna Consciousness Sunday evening in Spanish Fork. We're presenting Krishna Consciousness Sunday evening in Salt Lake City. But Salt Lake City will be just unfolding, uncovering more and more the layers, the great personalities who went before us in this session. And we can't make advancement without following in their footsteps. All of us, I think you'll agree, have a deep-seated need, a drive for improvement. And therefore, our talk today is called Progressive Life. What is progressive life? I remember in my running days, I was probably between 50 and 55, and I was doing speed work for improving your running capacity, not only your short-term speed, but your stamina. The best practice is what's called intervals, and that's sprint work, that's speed work. You do 220s, you do 440s, you do 880s around the track, you take a rest, you walk a lap or two, and then you do them repeatedly, and you time yourself. and you try to do at least a 5K pace. And so I would go to the BYU track quite often on an evening, nice summer evening, when the day has cooled off a bit, and do speed work. And I would meet these two guys who were in their mid-60s, Dave Warner, I think one of his name was, and then Clay, I forget their name. They were in mid-60s, and they were also doing speed work. I was thinking, how can these guys 15 years older than me in their mid-60s be doing speed work? I mean, why? And I asked Dave one time, I said, isn't it hard, the pounding and the impact? I mean, I can understand running easily, you know, as recreationally, but speed work, that means you're at the age of 65, you're still trying to improve your stamina, you're trying to improve your speed. And how is that possible when the body's 65 years old? And Dave, I think his name was Dave, he said, the desire for improvement is the strongest desire in all living beings. You cannot give it up. You cannot surrender to the march of time. So in spite of all indications to the contrary, they were trying to push the envelope and improve as late in life as they could. Of course, that's an effort that's doomed to defeat on the physical level, because no matter how much you train, no matter how long you train, no matter how old you are when you're training, eventually the body's going to get the best of you. And so you cannot continue to improve physically throughout your whole life. And that's why, you know, the efforts of people, you know, to channel that desire for self-improvement into the physical, even in the optimal stages of life, is not, you know, it's not going to be very fruitful. It's going to be pretty frustrating. But there are other ways to improve. There are other areas in which you can come up higher in, even when the body is starting to break down and age and disappoint you and no longer perform in the way that you were accustomed to having had it perform earlier. So we can improve continually in this life beyond the physical. The mind, for instance, stays agile way, way, way up into the later stages of life. Far beyond the time when the physical body starts to let you down, the mind is still agile. I can still chant 800 verses in the Srimad Bhagavatam and the Bhagavad Gita from memory. And I like to try to learn 3 or 4 new verses every day. And I'm still successful in doing that. But even then, there will come a point, it depends on how much you've used your mind, exercised your mind during your life. I've always loved memorization and poetry and communication. I'm getting some beep here. I don't know. You can all hear me okay? All right. And so I've always exercised my mind. When I had my annual physical recently, they give you this iPad and you do all these mind exercises and then they rate you. So they told me for my age group, which was 75, I'm in the 96th percentile. But eventually, the mind is also going to start lagging. Prabhupada himself, when he was in his late 70s and 80s, sometimes a verse would be elusive to him. Prabhupada would mumble, I'm an old man, I can't remember everything. So beyond the physical body, you can continue to try and improve on the level of the mind. Gandhi was quite elderly, and at the time he was assassinated, he was learning Bengali in his late 70s or 60s or 70s. He was learning an entirely new language. So the mind gives us a lot more facility for progress, for improvement, but even the mind itself will lag at some point in time. So what is it that will not only help us improve throughout the entirety of our life, but even go beyond the demise of this body? And that is devotion. That is bhakti. We can improve in terms of knowing the absolute truth and deepening and enriching and become absorbed and submerged in the service of the Lord. Even as the mind and the body break down, let us down and disappoint us, we can still go to newer and higher levels in terms of our devotion. Now let's back up just a little bit. Most people nowadays, Yashatma Buddhi Konapi Tridahadiki Shvadihi Yatirta Buddhi Sadi Janashu Bingasa Eva Gocharaha. It is a fact, unfortunately, we're living in the Kali Yuga age, in which there's a dearth of spiritual knowledge. Most people take the body as the self, this bag of mucus, bile, and phlegm as to be the self, the byproducts of this body, in terms of children, relatives, to be their relatives. They take the land of their birth to be a worshipable place, and therefore the mentality of the general population today is not much better than that of the cow or the ass. Take the body as the self and know nothing beyond that. If you go up to the dog or the hog or the cow or the ass and you start to explain to them that they are not this body, they are an eternal spirit soul living within that body, they'll just look at you and wonder, where are my treats? Has he got anything for me to eat? That's the extent of their consciousness. But the information we have from the Bhagavad Gita is that beyond this life, there is the opportunity to progress. That just as on this earthly planet, there are different neighborhoods. There are what we call the ghettos, the rundown neighborhoods. There are the middle class neighborhoods with the one level ranch style, 70s and 80s style older homes. And then there are the areas like Woodland Hills or Cedar Hills or Alpine, which are the very, very multi-million-dollar houses on big, big plots of land. For her birthday, I asked my Bobby, her birthday was in January, what she would like to do most. Would you like to go to the butterfly biosphere at Thanksgiving Point? Would you like to go to the aquarium in Salt Lake City? Would you like to go to the Hogle Zoo? So my Bobby, she's also known as AKA the Llama Lady. She said, well, we have a lot of volunteers that come every Saturday. And when the weather gets nice and we have a lot of volunteers and we can take a lot of llamas out in the trailer, I'd like to scout places where we can take the llamas on a walk. It's not too far to travel. So take me around. Let's go around in a circumference of 5 to 6 miles and see what sort of opportunities there are to take the llamas for walks. So we drove up to Woodland Hills, which we can see. It's a very exclusive neighborhood that's up on the hills above where we are. I haven't been up there for many years. And we drove around some of these exclusive homes up there, and it's quite amazing. Really, really, really opulent homes, and most of them sit on several acres of land. So if you walk in the wide residential streets, there's hardly any traffic, and there's a lot of grass alongside of the road. So we thought that would be a good option in the spring. Take the llamas up there, unload them, and just walk through the residential areas. I don't think the neighbors would complain. They'd find it interesting and intriguing. And they have so much land, I doubt they would mind. So much land, so much money, so much. I doubt they would mind the llamas nibbling a little of their grass along the roadside. So there are low-class neighborhoods, there are middle-class neighborhoods, and there are high-class neighborhoods. So similarly, within the universe, there is also upper-class planets, middle-class planets, and lower-class planets. Okay? So if you're aware of this, and if you're aware that as you work in this life, so you will get the fruits in the next life, then you can capitalize on the different standards of living that are available in the universe. You can improve, you can step up, you can social climb from one lifetime to another. Urdvam gajanti satvasha madhya jashanti jagani guna britushi adho gajanti tamashaham. If you're aware that there are different standards of living, if you're aware of what it is you have to do in this life in order to get a good position in the next life, you can elevate yourself in the next life to the higher planets. The Mormons have a saying that as God is, man will become; as man is, God was. Well, the problem with that is that God was never like us and will never be like God. So they get a lot of criticism from the mainstream Christians for this kind of talk. It's considered heretical because you can't become God. But I understand what they're saying. They're not saying that we can become capital G-O-D. They're saying we become godly or godlike or small G-O-D. But we have another term which doesn't allow any confusion. It's less ambiguous. We'd say, as man is, demigods were. As demigods are, man will become. So how can you become a demigod in your next life, get your birth on a higher planet, live for hundreds of thousands of years, and enjoy a standard of living which is unimaginable here on earth? That is a science. It's a science of karma kanda, knowing how to plant seeds in this life, the fruits of which you'll taste in the next life. So that's urdvam gachanti sattva, by living your life in the mode of goodness. And that means no meat, no alcohol, no illicit sex, no gambling, peacefulness, non-violence, taking amongst your foodstuffs, fruits, flowers, leaves, vegetables, dairy products, things which are obtained without violence, living without infringing on the rights of other living beings, sharing the planet equally with all of God's children, and engaging in purificatory activities, not as a butcher or as a bar owner or nightclub owner, not as a slaughterhouse participant, but earning one's living in a natural way, teaching, flower arranging. There are all kinds of occupations that one can adopt that don't involve illicit sex, gambling, meat eating, and intoxication. And as a result of planting those seeds in this life, when you leave the body, you'll find yourself in a very, very upper class residential neighborhood. It's called Shwaloka, the heavenly planets above this planet. If you're not so adept at manipulating the laws of action and reaction, you're more passionate and you make mistakes along the way, and you're a little crude, then madhye tishtanti rajasaha, if you're not up in the mode of goodness, peacefulness, nonviolence, sensitivity, compassion, consideration, but you're more a little rough, a little crude, then madhye tishtanti, then you'll come back to take birth on these middle planetary systems. The Earth on which we reside is a middle. It's not upper, it's not lower, it's a middle planetary system. So madhye tishtanti rajasaha, you can come back to a middle class neighborhood, so to speak, in your next life. And then finally, if you totally ignore the principles of action and reaction and act capriciously and whimsically and inevitably transgressing most of the basic laws of the universe as God has laid them down, then lacking any, not having planted any good seeds, but rather planted seeds of pain and suffering, insensitivity, then Jigani Guna Britushya Hogadanti Tamasha. The future of those who eat meat, engage in illicit sex, gambling, intoxication is not very bright. It says they sink down to the low class, to the ghetto of the universe, the lower planets, Patala, Matala, Sutala, where they engage in activities which are full of pain and suffering, abominable activities in the hellish planet. So this is a next level of materialism. The grossest level of materialism: eat, drink, and be merry, and have no concern for the future. Don't plan for anything in the future. The next level of materialism is to know that what I'm doing now will have repercussions in the future. For instance, if you're listening out there and you're a 12, 15-year-old student, I'll put you on notice as an older person with more experience, that based on your study habits and your self-discipline and the friends you keep and the books you read and the movies you watch, you're creating for yourself a situation later on in life. Right now you have a 15, 16-year-old body. Every 7 to 10 years, all the cells of the body will die and replaced by new ones. So 7 years from now, you have basically a new body. 7 years from now, you have another body. 7 years from now, you have another body. So what you do now in this body, if you have good habits, good discipline, you read good books, you associate with good people, then 2 or 3 bodies away, when you're in your 50s or 45, you'll have that house on Woodland Hills with the lot and the $1 million property, and you'll see the Hare Krishnas walking their lamas out in front of your house on a Saturday morning. On the other hand, if as a 15-year-old, you chase the girls and you do spitballs during class and sit in the back of the class and and play hooky and you drink 10 energy drinks a day and go out and get up to mischief on a Saturday night, then when you're 45 and 50, you're going to live in the ghetto. You're not going to be happy with your situation. So that's the next level of materialists. Know that what we do early on in life, in our early bodies, so to speak, will determine whether we have a good, higher, or lower situation later on in this life. Now, the next level of materialism is to know that what I do in this life is going to impact where I'm going to take my birth in the next life. Yam yam bapi shmaram vara tyajate ya pariyadishamabam yati natyashamya. Whatever one's thoughts are at the time of death, that will carry one's subtle body and spirit to another womb in the next life. So if we make good choices, we plant good seeds, we help others, we not be a cause of suffering to any other living being, not just human beings, but animals as well. We have a cruelty-free diet ourselves. We worship God. We do good to others. People are glad that we cohabit the planet with them, not sorry that we cohabit the planet with them. Then we can go to the higher planets and live in, the woodland hills of the higher planetary systems. The problem is, with all of that, that's not the ultimate. If you take birth as a demigod with a lifespan of hundreds of thousands of years, and here's an interesting fact. The demigods are born full grown. They're born full grown. They don't have to be packed up 9 months in the womb, come out, bawling, spend 2 years learning how to walk, learning how to talk. The demigods basically appear full grown. None of all that agony and misery of infancy and adolescence. So that's how they enter into the higher life. How they exit, the period of old age for the demigods is only 1 year. They live for hundreds of thousands of years, but the aging process only lasts for 1 year before they pass away and die. So they have hundreds of thousands of years in which they're fully mature, their senses are fully awakened, they can enjoy to the max for hundreds of thousands of years. There's very little that detracts from that in infancy. There's very little that detracts from that in old age. Look at us. We only live 70 or 80 years. We have to spend 20 years getting over the awkwardness, the spasticity of youth before we become mature and graceful. And then at the other end, many of us spend 10 to 20 years in invalidity. My mother went into an old age home. They call them a leisure living facility. When she was about 80, she passed away at 82. So she was living by herself after my dad passed away, but then, she was standing on a stool, ranging some china in her shelves, and then the stool, and she broke her hip, and that's it. That's the bell tolls when you're old and you break your hip. And they didn't have hip replacements so much in those days. So, and then she had a stroke as a result of that. She was paralyzed on her left side. So she spent the last 4 or 5 years of her life in invalidity, the last 2 years in an old age home. Now there was one lady, when I would go to visit her, there was a lady down the hall. You'd hear this 24 hours a day. Oh, oh, oh. I mean, you couldn't imagine the misery this lady must have been in. But that wasn't the worst part. That wasn't the worst part. I was told that she was 93 years old, and she'd been in that leisure living center since she was 73. Can you imagine? 20 years? She didn't have verbal skills. She'd had a stroke or something. She'd lost the ability to articulate and communicate, save and except for, ah, ah. It was like a constant refrain. It was the ambience. It would start to drive me over the edge just after, a half an hour visit to my mom. I can't imagine how that, the other residents must have just gotten so used to it that they phased it out. So just see how much you can improve your situation, that in our short life here and now on earth, 20 years are wasted in youth, 10 to 20 years are wasted on the other end. Whereas if you plant good seeds, you can live hundreds of thousands of years without any detraction from infancy and adolescence, nor from invalidity and old age. Now that would seem to be the ultimate, wouldn't it? If I told you that Lord Brahma lives on the topmost planet, the highest planet, lives for 311 trillion years, and he's relatively free from birth, death, disease, and old age, you would think that's it. There's nothing better than that. That's the ultimate. Let me, what do I have to do? Teach me true. What do I have to do? And yet Lord Krishna, who loves you too much to send you to the heavenly planets, indicates that there is something, a destination, much, 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 much better than Lord Brahma. Now we live in Mormon, Utah, and a foundational principle of LDS philosophy is progression. Progression. They believe that you progress from human being to small God, and you're always progressing. Jesus, they see as someone who had been progressing for a lot longer time than we have and is further down the road. So in that sense, he is our guru of progress. But Krishna doesn't want you just to progress in the material world of birth, death, disease, and old age. What if, for argument's sake, you progress all the way up to become Lord Brahma? You create your own universe. You become a patriarch of millions and millions of Prajapatis and progenitors. You're the originator of all the species. What if you progress to that point? Krishna tells us in the 8th chapter, 16th verse in the Bhagavad Gita, Abrahma bhuvanalaga purnadavati mama peji purna janma navidyate. He's giving us a preview of coming attractions. Abrahma bhuvanalaga. Even if of all the different karmis, of all the different fruitive workers, you become the best of all of them, the best Mormon. You progress the furthest that you can progress by planting the best seeds and the most large number of seeds. You become Brahma. There's still a problem, folks. You haven't solved all the problems. You haven't even solved the basic problems of life, which are birth, death, disease, and old age. Because even Lord Brahma has to die. From our little puny point of view, he lives 60, 70 years. Lord Brahma lives 311 trillion years. We may think, oh, he's immortal. Just like there are flies and insects. They are born in the morning, they propagate, they mate, they produce, they propagate, generations and generations and generations. They create whole civilizations during the daylight hours. And by the evening of that same day, they die. There are millions of them dead. So for those insects, the life of Lord Brahma would seem to be eternal. And yet Lord Brahma, after 311 trillion years, says, how has it gone so quickly? The insect lives 100 years by his calculations. We live 100 years by our calculations. And Lord Brahma lives 100 years by his calculations. And therefore, Lord Krishna, who wants the best for his children, warns us off of the path of karma kanda or fruitive work by saying, Abrahma bhuvanalaga purnadavati mamva, from the lowest planet to the highest planet of Lord Brahma, they're all places of misery where repeated birth, death, disease, and old age take place. True, are you serious? Living for hundreds of thousands, if not millions and trillions of years, no pangs of infancy, no pangs of birth, death, and age. To me, it seems like that would be a permanent solution to all my problems, and yet it's not a solution at all. You really haven't progressed. You really haven't changed things in any fundamental, major way. Because the pleasures of the demigods, eating, sleeping, mating, defending, ahara nidyabayam, are the same pleasures that the dog and the hog feels. Kashtan kamadhe vid bujan ye. Rishabh Dev says, why go to all the trouble of building a material civilization, whether it be here on the middle planets with our cities and motor cars and all that comes with it, or whether it be on the higher planets where you don't have to worry about ecological considerations, you don't have to worry about the medical profession, you don't have to worry about health care, you don't have to worry about anything up there. The problem is that we are eternal. We're spirit souls, part and parcel of God. And we don't want to die. But whether you experience eating, sleeping, mating, defending as Brahma, or whether you experience it as an insect, the experience is the same. The food running across your tongue, scintillating the taste buds, is the same for the mosquito as it is for Lord Brahma. The momentary feeling of intense pleasure at the time of ejaculation of semen is basically not any different for the hog or the pigeon than it is for Lord Brahma. Sleeping on a beautiful bed in the clouds in the spirit in the higher planets of the material world, or sleeping on a bed of leaves for a bear, or for a jackal, or for a hyena. When you're asleep, you're asleep. It doesn't matter what kind of a body you have, you're still just sleeping on the ground. And so to drink milk out of a golden pot is no different than drinking milk out of an iron pot. You really haven't improved or changed anything. And God, who wants the best for us, who's our very, very best friend, gives us the indicator how we can progress, how we can advance to the point where we never again have to worry about birth, death, old age, and disease. We never have to again be harassed by time in its three phases of past, present, and future. We can progress. We can go to that level where we get our eternal, imperishable, original spiritual body full of knowledge, bliss. It lasts forever. We never have to worry about death, disease, and old age, either for ourselves or for others. You can cultivate deep, meaningful, eternal relationships without the specter, without the dark cloud of loss and disappointment and separation hanging over you. And the best part about it is, at all, we can reconnect with the all-attractive Supreme Personality of Godhead, from whom we come and who is Suridam Sarvabhutanam. He is our best friend. Yam Shaimasunam and Chintagunu Sharupam. He stands there with his flute to his lips, a smile on his face, peacock feather tucked in his crown, and a threefold bending form. And he invites us. He enchants us. He allures us to transcend the temporality of dull, dead matter, to advance beyond the level of birth, death, disease, and old age, to the eternal spiritual world where life is eternal, full of bliss and knowledge. Shmenan Bangi Treya Parjitam Sati Vishtiram Viram Bamshi Charam Kushalam Ujaram Chandrakenam Govindakyam Haritanamisha Keshir Tirtipedante Mok Precious Tabiri Saki Bandhu Sangyorangam. It is stated, I believe by Narottam Das Thakur or Parvananda Saraswati, I'm not sure. If you're bound and determined to stick around in this material world, which is temporary, full of matter and ignorance, if you're bound to turn your back on and ignore or be indifferent to the invitation of the Lord towards eternal life full of bliss and knowledge, then whatever you do, do not look upon Shmeran Bangi Treyaparchadam Sachi Vishtanam, the smiling face of Govinda, Govindakam Chandrakenam, standing in the moonlight on the banks of the river Yamuna with a flute to his lips, peacock feathered his hair, Govindakam Haritanamisha Keshirtam, by Keshi God. Do not, whatever, if you're attached to friends, family, country, the progress of this material body up to the planets of the demigods, then don't look, don't even glance, don't go there, don't look at the alluring, enchanting, smiling face of Govinda as it's bathed in moonlight at Keshigat on the banks of the river, because all your plans for material, temporary happiness in this material world will be disrupted. You will be bitten by the snake, by the poisonous snake of love of Krishna. Once having seen the unsurpassed beauty of Krishna, you'll never again be happy with anything less. That's what happened in Narada Muni. Sakriya Darshanam Etad Kamya Matkana. Krishna appeared before him just briefly, and by that brief appearance, with which the Lord benedicted Dhruva. He got such a taste. Having seen the Lord once, nothing would come close to satisfying him unless he were to see the Lord again. And so Dhruva knuckled down. He performed devotional service. He traveled all over the world, ignoring the formalities of this material world, simply absorbed in chanting and hearing the glories of the Lord, humble, non-envious, and tushtamana, fully satisfied within his mind. So the goal of bhakti, as we've described, is the ultimate summum bonum of life, in which all problems, notably birth, death, disease, and old age, are solved. But in gearing yourself up and in following the great souls in their footsteps back to that eternal ultimate abode of the spiritual world, you live the very, very best, purest, most ecstatic, deeply satisfied life here and now, just as Narada Muni did, a 5-year-old boy with every disadvantage. Everything was against him. No parents, no father, no mother, no guardians, no money, nothing. And yet he achieved an eternal, immortal, spiritual body. And he's instructing us right now. He's beckoning us. Come back to home, back to Godhead. Don't have anything to do. Do not waste your time in terms of temporary progress in this material world, but explode, catapult yourself according to the desire of the Lord and the help which is coming down to us from the previous acharyas, back to home, back to Godhead, to solve all problems once and for all, permanently. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So I'm going to read some of these comments, and then if you're there, Rob, we'll hear from you. Is that okay?
Yes, Prabhuji.
All right. We've got on board here Jean, Brent, Natasha, Derek, Vaibhavi, Govinda Dave, Sukshma. She says, all glories to the Lord Nityananda, reminding everybody about the celebration in Salt Lake City at 6 o'clock on Sunday night of Lord Nityananda's. We've got Manasha Ganga. And actually, if you're not local, you can get it live on Facebook. They have some problems with the sound. They haven't really worked it out, but anyway, you can hope for the best. Sundari Priya, Hare Krishna Sundari Bhakti Gary, please have my obeisances. Madhua Sarya, Hare Krishna, thanks for dropping in. Anjali, I'm going to be talking to Anjali tomorrow night, I believe. She just came in to hear marginal time, good timing. Anjali again, pranams. She calls me the postman. Several comments from Anjali. She is prolific. She bumps up our number of comments by 30 or 40% single-handedly. Kokila and KK, my old friends from Chino. I hope you're all well and happy. Please come and visit us again. John Malik. And who else do we have here? Yogi and Pragna. Thank you very much for dropping in. Derek says, wow, powerful class. Thank you. Yeah, I felt the power coming through me. So we come to you, Rob, for some well thought out words of conclusion here.
Thank you, Prabhuji. I hope they're well thought out. I find it very interesting that Krishna will continue to give you the lessons that you need to learn. He'll provide you with the experiences and situations to hear what needs to be heard. So just last night, I was on a hike and ran into another group of folks that were hiking, and ended up speaking to them about Krishna consciousness. And one of the main topics we talked about was the lower and higher planets, and describing reincarnation and how we progress either up and down in these planets when we're just focused on material enjoyment, or even living in a good way. And I was able to describe to them that that's not the goal. The goal is to go back to Godhead, back home, to Krishna's realm. And the way to do that was through devotional service. And at first they're like, service is good and everything like that, but we don't think that's what the objective is. And I was able to describe them in such a way that it's like, well, what you're talking about, when you follow your own Christian principles, is that not devotional service? If you follow it to a T and you do what they ask you to do, you don't just turn your life over to Christ and then go off and do whatever you want and still seek material, gratification. Instead, he calls you to be of service, to clothe the naked and to feed the hungry, and to provide all these different services. Are you not serving him by doing that service to others? And it was, they kind of had a little bit of an aha moment. They're like, yeah, I guess you are right. That is service. And so I was able to kind of describe devotional service to them, and that was the goal, was to get out of the cycle of this birth, life, the birth, life, and death, and to go back to what they would just, in their terms, the ultimate heaven, and not to be stuck in these material planets. And it was a great conversation. And so they may even be coming to the temple on Saturday.
Well, congratulations. You're the ambassador of the spiritual world. You're carrying the message of the great souls to whomever you meet. Yare Deke, Tare Ko, Krishna Upadesh, Amaragai, Tare Desh, whomever you meet, wherever you go. Explain to people the science of Krishna so that they may taste those fruits and become free of birth, death, old age, and disease. The bottom line is, who's more qualified than me? Who's the most qualified person? Who's progressed as far as you can progress within the material world? The answer is Brahma. What is Brahma doing? There's the Brahma Samhita, like so many verses glorifying Lord Krishna. Brahma says, I would trade my position as the topmost demigod in the material world in order to be a blade of grass in the spiritual world in a New York taxi driver's minute. So why would we then divert ourselves, waste all of that time climbing up and up and up to attain the level of Lord Brahma when we already have passed down to us the conclusion of Lord Brahma, that if you just do Krishna Consciousness, just do devotional service for 20 or 30 or 40 years, then you'll go back home, back to Godhead. That's the ultimate argument, is coming from the ultimately materially successful person, Lord Brahma, who incidentally is the leader of our line of succession, Brahma Madhva Gaudiya Sampradaya. So that should settle it pretty much. What do you think?
Yes, Prabhuji. And I was going to add one other thing to what I said is, I think the most important thing about what I shared and hearing about what you're talking about today is I needed to hear what I was talking about. It was doing a service to someone else and sharing Krishna consciousness with them. But ultimately, that was brought up, and I was encouraged to walk down that path of discussion because it's what I needed to hear. I'm not above needing to be reminded of not seeking sense enjoyment, material satisfaction, but instead seeking to be a devotional servant.
Yeah, seeking the highest satisfaction, the highest level of enjoyment. Well, thank you as always, Rob. Your comments are always to the point and extremely well thought out and insightful. So thank you always for your contribution. Thank you for everybody there on Facebook who commented. You're welcome to continue to comment even after we sign off. If you have a question, I will consider it a great honor and privilege to be able to answer it according to my best ability. So this concludes our 3 segments on the 26th verse of the 6th chapter. And I got to tell you, we're not done. We're not done. Again, after 3 45-minute sessions, we're just getting warmed up on this topic. So join us again next Monday. And we encourage you to attend, of course, Saturday program. I'll be there on Saturday, Salt Lake City. That'd be great to see you there, either directly in person or remotely. But Sunday, for those of you who have been coming to the Krishna Temple for some time and you're eager to go a little higher, to get more in-depth cultural experience, then the Salt Lake City Temple is celebrating Nityananda Triyodashi on Sunday at 6 o'clock with a bathing ceremony, kirtan, a power po. I won't be there because I'm going to talk here Sunday, but you have that option, and we encourage you, if you're feeling like, okay, I want more, I've heard enough introductory, basic, elementary lectures from Caru, then I encourage you to go in person if you're from Utah to that celebration, or remotely if you're from out of state. But thank you very much. This concludes our 3-part series for this week. We'll be back with more of the same next week. And in the meantime, have a great day chanting Hare Krishna. Have a great weekend. Nityananda Prabhuji ki jai, Gaur Nitai ki jai. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.